when my boss looked me in the eye and said, "You're too old for this position, Patricia. We're going in a younger direction." I felt something inside me break. Not my spirit. No, that came later. What broke was the last thread of loyalty I had to a company I'd given 17 years of my life to. Because here's what Dennis Coulter didn't know as he smirked across that desk. I'd been documenting everything for 6 months. Every joke about my age. Every younger, less qualified hire. Every time I was passed over for a promotion that went to someone half my age with a quarter of my experience. And I wasn't just documenting it for myself. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where this really started, because the firing wasn't the beginning. It was just the moment everything came into focus. My name is Patricia Henderson, and at 53 years old, I was the Senior Account Director at Momentum Marketing Solutions in Chicago. I started there right out of my second attempt at college. My first attempt got interrupted by my starter marriage and a kid at 22, but that's another story. By the time I joined Momentum in 2006, I was hungry, determined, and ready to prove myself. And I did. God, I did. I built the corporate accounts division from the ground up. When I started, we had 12 clients and pulled in maybe $800,000 in annual revenue. By 2023, my division had 47 major corporate clients and was generating $6.2 million annually. I'd won the company's Excellence Award 3 times. I'd brought in our biggest client, Thornhill Industries, worth $400,000 a year by itself. I wasn't just good at my job, I was exceptional. My daughter, Emma, had graduated college debt-free because of my work. I'd bought a beautiful condo in Lincoln Park. I'd built a life I was proud of, entirely on my own after my divorce when Emma was 7. Work wasn't just work, it was proof that I'd made something of myself despite every setback life had thrown at me. The change started about 2 years ago, subtly at first. Dennis Coulter joined as VP of Operations in January 2022. He was 41, came from a tech startup in San Francisco, and had that particular brand of confidence that comes from failing upward in the corporate world. You know the type, expensive sneakers with suits, talked constantly about disruption and synergy, thought everyone over 40 was technologically illiterate. At first, I tried to like him. Really, I did. "Patricia, great work on the Thornhill renewal," he said in one of our first meetings, flashing that practice smile. "Very traditional approach. We're going to want to inject some fresh thinking into these strategies going forward." Traditional. That was his code word I'd learn. It meant old. Within 6 months, Dennis hired 3 new account directors. Kelsey was 28, Brandon was 31, Madison was 26, and had been out of college for barely 4 years. "We need young energy," Dennis announced at the staff meeting where he introduced them. "People who understand the digital landscape intuitively. No offense to our more experienced team members, but the market is changing, and we need to change with it." He looked right at me when he said more experienced. Several people shifted uncomfortably in their seats. I raised my hand. "Dennis, I've led our social media campaigns for the past 3 years. Our Instagram engagement is up 340% under my direction. I think I understand the digital landscape just fine." Sure, he waved his hand dismissively. "But there's a difference between learning something and being a digital native, right? These kids grew up with this stuff. These kids. I was 51, not 75, but to Dennis, anyone born before 1980 might as well have been using a typewriter and carbon paper." The comments kept coming, little cuts that added up over months. In the break room, "Patricia, do you need help with the new project management software? I know technology can be challenging for your generation." In meetings, "Let's get some younger perspectives on this. Patricia, you can share the traditional view first." At the company happy hour, "When Patricia and I were young, well, when I was young and Patricia was around, things were so different, right?" Each comment got a laugh. Each laugh felt like a slap. But the real turning point came in March of 2023. The creative director position opened up, a position that should have been mine. I'd been acting in that capacity for 8 months already, ever since Richard retired. I created the pitch that landed our second biggest client. I'd redesigned our entire creative workflow. The job had my name on it. I spent a week perfecting my application. Emma helped me with the presentation, and I practiced until I could deliver it in my sleep. I wore my best suit, the Navy one that made me feel powerful and professional. The interview panel consisted of Dennis, our CEO Gerald Packard, and the HR director Claire Wong. It went perfectly. I presented case studies, ROI figures, client testimonials. Gerald nodded approvingly throughout. Even Claire, who usually kept a poker face, smiled at several points. Then Dennis leaned forward. Patricia, this is all very impressive. Very solid work. But I have to ask, where do you see yourself in 10 years? It's a standard interview question, but something about his tone made my stomach drop. Continuing to grow with momentum, I said confidently. Mentoring the next generation of creative leaders while still driving innovation in our campaigns. Right, but realistically, Dennis glanced at Gerald, then back at me. You'll be 63 in 10 years. Isn't that around retirement age? We're looking for someone who can grow into this role long-term, build a legacy. Someone with, say, 20 or 30 years left in their career. The room went very quiet. I have no plans to retire at 63, I said, keeping my voice level despite the rage building in my chest. My mother worked until she was 72. I'm in excellent health, and I plan to keep contributing at a high level for many years to come. Of course, Dennis said, but he was already writing something on his notepad. Just something we have to consider when making leadership investments. Claire looked uncomfortable. Gerald looked away. I didn't get the job. Madison got it. 26-year-old Madison, who'd been with the company for 8 months and whose biggest accomplishment was creating a TikTok that got 50,000 views. At the announcement meeting, Dennis put his hand on Madison's shoulder like a proud father. This is the future of momentum, everyone. Young, hungry, innovative. This is the kind of leadership that's going to take us to the next level. I smiled and clapped with everyone else. Inside, I was screaming. That night, I sat in my condo with a bottle of wine and cried for the first time in years. Emma called. She always had perfect timing. Mom, you okay? You sound weird. They gave the job to Madison, I said and my voice cracked. What? That's insane. You've been doing that job for months. You have 17 years there. Dennis said they needed someone with more years ahead of them. Someone who wouldn't be retiring soon. That's age discrimination, Mom. That's literally illegal. It's also impossible to prove. He didn't put it in writing. It's just how things are. So what are you going to do? I took a long sip of wine. I don't know yet, but I'm not going quietly. That was April 2023. That was when I started keeping records. I'm not a lawyer, but I'm not stupid either. I knew that if Dennis was going to push me out, and I was now certain that was his goal, I needed evidence. Real, documented, undeniable evidence. So I started writing everything down. I bought a small notebook, nothing fancy, just a plain black Moleskine, and I kept it in my bag. Every comment, every meeting, every interaction that felt even slightly off, I documented it. Date, time, who was present, exact quotes when I could remember them. May 3rd, 2023. Dennis assigned the Thornhill quarterly strategy meeting to Brandon, despite Thornhill being my client for 7 years. When I questioned this, Dennis said, I think Brandon's fresh perspective will be better received. Thornhill's CEO is only 45. He'll relate better to someone closer to his age. May 17th, 2023, staff meeting. Dennis praised Kelsey's campaign for generating $50,000 in new revenue. I checked later. It was actually $32,000 and the campaign was based on a strategy I developed. Then said, this is what happens when you let young creatives run free instead of constraining them with outdated approaches. He didn't look at me, but 3 people did. June 2nd, 2023. Dennis circulated a memo about refreshing our team culture and included a section about considering whether all team members are still the right fit for our evolving mission. HR was CC'd, but documentation wasn't enough. I needed allies, and I needed to understand the legal landscape. I reached out to my friend Jessica, who worked in employment law at a firm downtown. We met for coffee on a Saturday morning at a cafe far from my office. Tell me everything, she said, pulling out a legal pad. I told her. All of it. The comments, the passed-over promotion, the increasingly obvious pattern of favoring younger employees. Jessica's expression got grimmer as I talked. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Patricia, This is textbook age discrimination. The problem is proving it. Companies are smart about this now. They don't say you're too old in emails. They hide behind euphemisms, culture fit, energy, fresh perspectives. It's all code. So there's nothing I can do. I didn't say that. She tapped her pen on the pad. What you need is a pattern. Multiple incidents, preferably involving multiple people over 40. And ideally, you need them to slip up, to say something explicit that they can't walk back. How do I make that happen? You don't make it happen. You create circumstances where they're more likely to expose themselves. Keep documenting everything. But also, start paying attention to how they treat other older employees. Are you the only target, or is this systemic? I hadn't thought about that. I'd been so focused on my own situation that I hadn't looked at the bigger picture. There's Harold in accounting, I said slowly. He's 58. And Denise in HR, wait, Claire's assistant. She's got to be at least 55. Start watching how they're treated. Talk to them if you can do it naturally. And Patricia, Jessica leaned forward. Start looking for another job. Even if you have a case, this won't end well if you stay. But having another offer gives you leverage. I didn't want to hear that. I'd built my career at momentum. But Jessica was right. Over the next few weeks, I paid attention. Really paid attention. Harold had been at the company for 22 years. He'd been the accounting manager, but 6 months ago, a new CFO had come in, another dentist hire, 39 years old, and suddenly Harold was reporting to a senior accountant who was 32. When I ran into him at the coffee station one morning, I asked casually how things were going. Harold's face said everything. Honestly, Patricia, I'm looking for a way out. They're trying to force me into early retirement. Keep giving me these horrible performance reviews for things that were never problems before. Last week, Thomas, that's my new boss, the kid who still has his parents on his phone plan, told me I was resistant to change because I questioned a new accounting software that costs 3 times what we're paying now and does the same thing. Are you documenting this? He looked at me sharply. Are you? We understood each other. There's a woman in operations too, Harold said quietly. Veronica. 51. Been here 14 years. They just moved her to a cubicle in the basement, literally the basement, and cut her client list in half. She's looking for a lawyer. This wasn't just about me. This was systematic. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. I started recording conversations. Illinois is a 2-party consent state, which means I couldn't secretly record people without breaking the law. But I could keep my phone visible on my desk during meetings, and if someone asked, I could say I was taking notes on my device. And if I happened to have a voice recording app open, well, that was just backing up my note-taking, wasn't it? I know. It was a gray area. But I was 53 years old, watching my career get dismantled by a smug corporate bro who thought disruption meant pushing out everyone who remembered life before smartphones. I was willing to take some risks. The recording started in late June. The first useful one came on July 11th, 2023, during a meeting about restructuring the accounts division. Dennis's voice, clear as day. Look, I'm not saying we fire all the older employees. That would be illegal and stupid. I'm saying we make it clear that the future of this company is young, innovative, tech-forward. If certain people decide that's not the environment for them and choose to move on, that's their decision. Kelsey's voice. What about Patricia? She handles our biggest clients. Patricia's great. She's had a wonderful run. But she's from a different era. Clients want energy. They want to feel like they're working with people who get the current moment. When I'm in meetings with her, I can see clients' eyes glazing over. They're being polite, but they'd rather be talking to someone who speaks their language. So what do? We transition her clients to younger team members, gradually, so it looks natural. And we make sure her performance reviews reflect that she's struggling to adapt to our new direction. Create a paper trail. Then if we need to make a change, we're covered legally. My hands were shaking as I listened to the recording that night. This was it. This was exactly what I needed. But I wanted more. Throughout the summer of 2023, I became someone I didn't recognize. Not in a bad way, in a strategic way. I was a 53-year-old woman playing corporate chess against someone who'd underestimated me from day one. Dennis thought I was too old to understand the game. That was his first mistake. I kept recording meetings, always with my phone visible, always taking notes, so no one questioned why my device was out. I documented every interaction. I reached out to Harold and we compared notes. His situation was even worse than mine. He'd been given a performance improvement plan, which is corporate speak for, "We're building a case to fire you." In August, things escalated. Dennis called me into his office on a Thursday afternoon. Madison was there too, sitting in the chair next to the one I was directed to. That was odd. Madison and I weren't on the same team anymore. "Patricia, thanks for coming in," Dennis said, leaning back in his chair with that casual confidence that made my blood boil. "We wanted to talk to you about your accounts." "What about them?" "We've been reviewing the portfolio, and we think it makes sense to redistribute some of your larger clients. Give you a chance to focus on, well, on accounts that might be a better fit for your skill set." I kept my face neutral. My current accounts are performing exceptionally well. Thornhill just renewed for another year, and Cascade increased their budget by 30%. "Right, and that's great," Dennis said. "But those relationships were built a while ago. We need to think about long-term relationship management. Madison's going to be here for the next 20, 30 years. It makes sense for her to build relationships with our major clients now, so there's continuity. And what accounts would I be handling instead?" Dennis slid a paper across the desk. I looked at the list and felt my stomach sink. They were our smallest accounts, the ones that barely broke $50,000 a year, the ones that newer employees usually handled. "You're demoting me," I said flatly. No, Dennis said quickly. "We're restructuring. Everyone's roles are shifting. We're just making sure everyone's working on accounts that match their abilities and career stage." Career stage. There it was again. "I've generated over $1 million in revenue for this company in the past 12 months alone," I said, and I could hear my voice getting tight. "My client retention rate is 98%. I don't understand what abilities you're questioning." "Patricia, don't take this personally," Madison chimed in, and God, I wanted to scream at the condescension in her voice. "You've had an amazing career, but the industry is changing so fast, and clients want to work with people who are at the forefront of digital trends. It's not about your past accomplishments, it's about where the market is going." She was 26 years old, explaining the market to me. "So to be clear," I said slowly, "you're taking away my major accounts and giving them to Madison. And I'm being reassigned to handle accounts that are typically given to entry-level staff." "I wouldn't frame it that way," Dennis said, but he wasn't meeting my eyes anymore. "How would you frame it?" "I'd frame it as the company evolving, and everyone finding their place in that evolution." I stood up. "I need to think about this." "It's not really optional, Patricia," Dennis said, and now there was an edge to his voice. "This restructuring is happening. You can be part of the team, or you can decide this isn't the right environment for you anymore." There it was, the threat barely veiled. "I understand," I said. "I'll let you know my thoughts." I walked out of that office, went straight to the bathroom, locked myself in a stall, and let myself shake for 5 full minutes. Then I pulled out my phone and checked the recording. Perfect. Crystal clear. Every word. That night, Emma came over. I told her everything that had been happening, and she'd been my rock through all of it. "Mom, this is insane," she said, pacing my kitchen. "They're forcing you out. You have to sue them." "I can't sue them for restructuring the company." "But it's not really about restructuring. It's about your age. They're doing this because they think you're old. Thinking it and saying it are different things," I said. "I need them to say it explicitly. I need it to be undeniable." "How are you going to make that happen?" "I'd been thinking about this all evening. I'm going to push back. Hard. Make Dennis uncomfortable. People say stupid things when they're cornered and angry. That sounds dangerous. Probably. But I've been playing it safe my whole career, and look where it got me." The next Monday, I requested a meeting with Dennis and Gerald Packard, the CEO. I framed it as wanting to discuss the restructuring and my concerns about the direction of my role. Gerald was 62, old enough that I hoped he might see through Dennis's bullshit, but he'd also hired Dennis and given him free rein, so I wasn't counting on his support. We met in the conference room at 2 p.m. I brought a folder of documentation, client results, revenue figures, testimonials. I also brought my phone, which I placed on the table and opened to a note-taking app. "Patricia, thanks for coming in," Gerald said warmly. He'd always been kind to me. Dennis mentioned you had some concerns about the new account structure. I do, I said. I've been with this company for 17 years. I've built the corporate accounts division from the ground up, and now I'm being asked to hand over my major clients I've spent years cultivating relationships with, to someone who's been here less than a year. I'd like to understand the business rationale for this decision. Dennis jumped in before Gerald could answer. We've been over this, Patricia. It's about long-term planning and career stage. Yes, I remember, I interrupted. But what does that actually mean? What specific deficiencies in my performance are driving this decision? No one's saying you're deficient, Gerald said. Then why am I being demoted? You're not being demoted, Dennis said, and I could see his jaw tightening. Your title isn't changing. Your salary isn't changing. But my responsibilities and my accounts, the things that actually matter in this industry, are being drastically reduced. If it's not a demotion, what is it? Silence. Gerald shifted in his seat. Patricia, Dennis said, and his voice had that forced patience of someone dealing with a difficult child. I'm going to be frank with you. The market is changing. Clients want to work with people who understand the digital landscape, who are Instagram native, who get TikTok trends and viral marketing. They want energy and innovation. And sometimes, that's just easier to find in younger team members who've grown up in this world. Are you saying I don't understand digital marketing? I'm saying there's a difference between learning something and living it from birth. So this is about my age. Dennis's eyes flashed. It's about fit. It's about being realistic about where someone is in their career and what they have to offer going forward. I'm 53, Dennis. Not 73. I have at least 15 more productive years in this career. Maybe, Dennis said, and his tone was sharp now. But let's be honest, Patricia. You're not going to be as hungry, as energetic, as innovative as someone who's building their career, not coasting toward the end of it. There it was. Gerald looked uncomfortable. Dennis, I don't think. No, it's fine, I said calmly, even though my heart was pounding. I want to make sure I understand. You're restructuring my role because you believe that, at 53, I'm coasting toward the end of my career and can't be as innovative as younger employees. I think that's a factor, yes, Dennis said. Among other things. And you believe this despite my revenue numbers, client retention rate, and 17 years of proven results. Past performance doesn't guarantee future performance. Especially when the employee is over 50, Dennis's face flushed. Age is just one factor in evaluating career trajectory. But yes, Patricia, if you're asking me to be completely honest, I think the future of this company lies with younger team members. I think clients respond better to younger account directors. And I think that at your stage of life, you're probably thinking more about work-life balance and retirement planning than about crushing it for the next 20 years. My phone was recording every word. I see, I said. Thank you for your honesty. Patricia, Gerald said, and he actually looked sorry. Dennis is being a bit blunt, but the reality is that we do need to think about succession planning. You've done incredible work here, and no one's taking that away from you. But maybe it is time to think about what the next chapter of your life looks like. We'd be happy to offer you a generous retirement package if you'd like to transition out voluntarily. I'm 53, I repeated. Not retirement age. Of course not, Gerald said. But early retirement can be a great opportunity. Spend time with family, travel, pursue hobbies. You've earned it. They were pushing me out, sweetening it with words like opportunity and generous package, but pushing me out nonetheless. I'll need to think about it, I said, gathering my folder. Take a week, Dennis said. But Patricia, either way, the restructuring is moving forward. You can be part of it with a new role, or we can discuss an exit package. But the old structure isn't an option anymore. I left that meeting and went straight to my car. Then I drove to Jessica's office without calling first. Her secretary tried to stop me, but Jessica heard the commotion and came out. Patricia, what's wrong? I need to know if I have a case, I said. Because if I do, I'm ready to burn it all down. Jessica listened to the recordings in her office, her expression getting darker with each minute. When they finished, she sat back in her chair and let out a long breath. Holy shit, she said. Is it enough? It's more than enough. Patricia, Dennis just handed you a textbook age discrimination case. You're coasting toward the end of your career. The future lies with younger team members. Clients respond better to younger account directors. He basically admitted that they're restructuring your role because of your age. So what do I do? Jessica pulled out a legal pad and started writing. First, you do nothing hasty. You're going to feel like confronting them, telling them you have recordings, threatening to sue. Don't. The element of surprise is your biggest advantage right now. What's the second thing? You're going to file an EEOC complaint. That's the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. By law, you have to file with them before you can sue for discrimination. It starts a paper trail, and it protects you from retaliation. Won't they know I'm planning to sue? Maybe. But EEOC complaints are common enough that they might just think you're going through the motions. And here's the thing. Once you file, if they fire you or demote you or make your life hell, that's retaliation, which is a separate legal violation. So you're protected. My hands were shaking. This was really happening. What else? Document everything from here on out. Every email, every meeting, every comment. Keep copies of all your work product, performance reviews, client emails, revenue reports. Get it all off their servers and onto your personal devices before they have a chance to lock you out. That sounds paranoid. Patricia, companies do this all the time. The day they decide to fire you, they'll lock your accounts and walk you out with security. You need those files now. Okay, what about the other employees? Harold and Veronica. Jessica's eyes lit up. That's perfect. If you can show a pattern of age discrimination affecting multiple employees, your case gets exponentially stronger. Can you get them to talk to me? I think so. Over the next 2 weeks, I quietly contacted Harold and Veronica. We met at a coffee shop 30 minutes from the office on a Saturday morning. Harold looked exhausted. Veronica looked angry. They're trying to force me out, Harold said immediately. I've got 22 years in, and they're making my life miserable. Bad performance reviews for things that were never problems before. Impossible deadlines. Yesterday, they asked me to train my replacement, this kid who's 33, and told me it was knowledge transfer for succession planning. They moved my desk to the basement, Veronica said, and her voice was tight. The literal basement, with the old files and the broken copier. Said it was temporary space reallocation, but it's been 4 months. My clients are being reassigned to younger staff. I heard my supervisor tell someone I was running out the clock to retirement. I'm 51. I have a mortgage and a kid in college. I told them about Jessica, about the EEOC complaints, about building a case. Will it work? Harold asked. I don't know, I admitted. But I know that if we don't fight back, they're going to push us out anyway, and we'll have nothing. At least this way we make them pay. They both agreed to meet with Jessica. By mid-September, all 3 of us had filed EEOC complaints. We documented everything. Jessica had enough evidence to build a substantial case. And then Dennis made his final mistake. On September 28, 2023, I got called into Dennis's office again. Gerald was there, and so was Claire from HR. The moment I walked in, I knew what was happening. Claire had a folder in front of her. Gerald wouldn't meet my eyes. Dennis looked almost gleeful. Patricia, thank you for coming in, Claire said in that carefully neutral HR voice. We need to discuss some performance issues. Performance issues, I repeated. She opened the folder and slid a paper across the desk. It was a performance improvement plan. A PIP, the dreaded corporate acronym that means we're building a case to fire you. I scanned the document. It was full of vague accusations, resistance to organizational change, difficulty adapting to new technologies and methodologies, declining client satisfaction scores. This is fabricated, I said calmly. My client satisfaction scores are available in the system. They're excellent. We've received verbal feedback from several clients expressing concerns about your approach, Dennis said. Which clients? We don't disclose that information. Convenient. And these new technologies I'm supposedly struggling with, which ones? The new project management system, for one, Claire said. You've required additional training sessions. I asked one question in one training session about a feature that wasn't working correctly. A question that 3 other people had. 2 of them were under 30. The point is, Dennis said, leaning forward, we're seeing a pattern of struggle. We want to help you improve, but we need to see significant progress over the next 60 days, or we'll have to consider whether this is still the right fit. 60 days. They were giving me 60 days to quit or be fired. I'd like to respond to these allegations in writing, I said. And I'd like to know who specifically contributed to this review. You can submit a written response, Claire said. But the PIP stands. I looked at Gerald. You're okay with this? He finally met my eyes, and I saw something there, guilt maybe, or discomfort. Patricia, we're just trying to ensure everyone is meeting the standards we need. If you can show improvement, I don't need to show improvement. My work has been exemplary for 17 years. Past performance, Dennis started. Doesn't guarantee future performance, I know, I snapped. You've made that very clear. Especially when it comes to older employees, right? Dennis's face went hard. Your age has nothing to do with this. Really? Because you told me 2 weeks ago that I was coasting toward the end of my career and that clients respond better to younger account directors. Claire's eyes widened. Gerald shifted uncomfortably. I never said that, Dennis said. Yes, you did. September 14th, 2:15 p.m., in the conference room. That's not. You're misremembering the context of that conversation. I pulled out my phone and opened the recording. Would you like me to play it for you? The room went dead silent. You recorded that meeting? Claire's voice was very quiet. I've been taking digital notes for months. Helps me keep track of important conversations. I looked at Dennis. Do you want to hear what you said about age and career trajectories, or should I just transcribe it for my EOC complaint? Your what? Dennis's face had gone white. My EEOC complaint, for age discrimination, which I filed 3 weeks ago, along with Harold from accounting and Veronica from operations. You remember Harold, right? The one who's being forced to train his replacement. And Veronica, who you moved to the basement. Gerald stood up abruptly. I think we need to pause this conversation. That's fine, I said, standing as well. But just so we're all clear, this performance improvement plan is retaliation for filing that EEOC complaint, which is illegal, and I have documentation of everything, every meeting, every comment, every email. I have recordings of you explicitly stating that you're restructuring roles based on age, and I have evidence of a systematic pattern of age discrimination affecting multiple employees. I looked at each of them in turn. So if you want to fire me, go ahead. But understand that when you do, I'm going to sue this company for every penny I can get. And based on what my attorney tells me, I have a very, very strong case. I walked out of that office with my head held high, even though my legs felt like jelly. I made it to my car before I started shaking. Then I called Jessica. I just told them, I said. I played the recording. I told them about the EOC complaint. What did they say? Nothing. Gerald shut the meeting down. But Jessica, I burned the bridge. I can't take it back now. Good, she said fiercely. Now we wait and see what they do next. They didn't fire me. That was the first surprise. For 2 weeks after that explosive meeting, absolutely nothing happened. I came to work every day expecting to be escorted out by security. Instead, I got silence. Dennis avoided me. Gerald avoided me. Even Claire from HR suddenly seemed to have urgent business elsewhere whenever I walked by. The PIP was never mentioned again. But I wasn't naive enough to think I'd won. I knew they were regrouping, talking to their lawyers, figuring out their next move. Companies don't just roll over when threatened with discrimination suits, especially not when there's clear evidence. So I kept documenting, kept recording, and kept doing my job at the highest level possible. And then on October 19th, 2023, everything changed. I got to work at 8 a.m. like usual. My assistant, Tanya, looked at me with wide eyes as I walked past her desk. Patricia, did you hear? Hear what? Dennis called in sick, and there are people from corporate counsel here. They've been in Gerald's office since 7 a.m. My heart started pounding. Corporate counsel from headquarters? 3 of them. And an HR director I've never seen before. This was it. They were preparing to fire me, building their case, making sure everything was legally airtight. I went to my office, closed the door, and immediately started backing up files to my personal cloud storage. If they were going to lock me out today, I needed everything saved now. At 10 a.m., Claire appeared at my door. Patricia, can you come to the main conference room, please? Her voice was strange. Not hostile, but not friendly either. Careful. What's this about? Just please come with me. I grabbed my phone and my notebook. If this was the termination meeting, I was going to document every second. The conference room was on the executive floor. As we walked, I saw other employees watching, some sympathetic, some curious. Word had clearly gotten around that something big was happening. Claire opened the door. Inside were Gerald, two people I didn't recognize in expensive suits, and a woman in her 50s with steel-gray hair and the bearing of someone who'd been in too many corporate battles to be intimidated by anything. No Dennis. Patricia, please sit down, Gerald said. He looked like he'd aged 5 years in 2 weeks. This is Amanda Hirsch from our corporate legal team, and Thomas Chun, also from legal. And this is Diane Matheson from our corporate HR division in New York. Diane Matheson. I'd heard that name before. She was the senior VP of Human Resources for the entire company, not just our Chicago office. This was much bigger than I'd thought. Ms. Henderson, Diane said, and her voice was crisp and professional. Thank you for joining us. I want to start by saying that we've been conducting an internal investigation over the past 2 weeks into the allegations raised in your EEOC complaint, as well as similar complaints filed by Harold Brennan and Veronica Chun. I said nothing, just watched. We've reviewed documentation, recordings, emails, and conducted interviews with multiple employees. We've also retained an external employment law firm to assess the situation objectively. She paused, folding her hands on the table. What we found was deeply troubling. My breath caught. The evidence suggests a pattern of age-based discrimination in this office, primarily emanating from VP of Operations Dennis Coulter, but with apparent awareness or complicity from other managers. The recordings you provided, Ms. Henderson, were particularly damning. Mr. Coulter made multiple explicit statements linking employment decisions to employee age, which is a clear violation of federal law and company policy. Gerald was staring at the table. He looked miserable. As of this morning, Diane continued, Dennis Coulter is no longer employed by this company. He was terminated at 7 a.m. for gross violation of company policy and federal employment law. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. Dennis was fired. They fired Dennis. Additionally, Diane said, we've placed 2 other managers on administrative leave pending further investigation. We're conducting a comprehensive review of all employment decisions made in this office over the past 18 months, with particular attention to employees over 40. Amanda Hirsch, the lawyer, leaned forward. Ms. Henderson, we want to be very clear. The company takes your allegations seriously. We believe you have been subjected to unlawful age discrimination. We are prepared to offer you a comprehensive settlement package that includes reinstatement to your previous role and responsibilities, back pay for any lost compensation, compensation for emotional distress, and a guarantee of no retaliation. We're also implementing mandatory anti-discrimination training for all managers, Diane added. And we're creating a direct reporting line to corporate HR for any employees who feel they're experiencing discrimination. I found my voice. What about Harold and Veronica? Similar settlements are being offered to both of them, Diane said, along with formal apologies from the company. And the performance improvement plan that was issued to me? Gerald finally spoke. Rescinded. Removed from your file. It never happened. I wanted in writing that it was issued in retaliation for my EOC complaint, I said. I wanted documented that it was unlawful. Amanda nodded. We can include that language in the settlement agreement. I sat back in my chair, trying to process this. You're really firing Dennis. We already fired him, Diane said firmly. This behavior is inexcusable. He created a hostile work environment, violated federal law, and exposed this company to enormous legal liability. There's no scenario where he continues to work here. What about Gerald? I looked at the CEO. He was in those meetings. He heard what Dennis said. Gerald looked like he wanted to disappear into his chair. Mr. Packard has been formally reprimanded, Diane said. He failed to intervene when he should have, which shows poor judgment. However, he wasn't the primary driver of the discrimination, and he's been with the company for 30 years with no prior incidents. He'll be undergoing additional training and will be monitored closely. It wasn't enough. Gerald had sat there and listened to Dennis say those things, and he'd done nothing. But I also knew that losing both Dennis and Gerald would throw the office into chaos, and I still had to work here. I want Gerald to issue a company-wide statement, I said, acknowledging that age discrimination occurred, that it was wrong, and that it won't be tolerated. I want every employee to know what happened and why. Gerald nodded immediately. I'll draft it today. And I want Madison removed from the creative director position, I added. She knew what Dennis was doing. She participated in meetings where my age was explicitly discussed as a factor in reassigning my accounts. She benefited from discrimination. Diane made a note. We'll review her role in this. If the evidence supports your allegation, appropriate action will be taken. One more thing, I said. I want a written guarantee that all of my original accounts are restored to me and that my role as senior account director is secure for as long as I choose to remain with the company. No more discussions about succession planning or career stages or any other euphemism for age. Done, Amanda said. We'll put it all in the settlement agreement. I looked around the table. These people were offering me everything I'd fought for. My job back, my accounts back, Dennis gone, public acknowledgement that I'd been wronged. But there was one thing they couldn't offer me, the ability to trust them again. I'll need to review the settlement agreement with my attorney before I sign anything, I said. Of course, Amanda said. We'll have it drafted by end of day tomorrow. Take all the time you need. The meeting ended. As I stood to leave, Diane stopped me. Ms. Henderson, I want you to know that this company failed you. Dennis Coulter should never have been allowed to create the environment he did. You were right to fight back, and you did it the right way. I hope you'll choose to stay with us, but I'll understand if you don't. I nodded and left the conference room. Outside, in the hallway, I leaned against the wall and just breathed. 2 weeks ago, I'd been facing termination. Now the man who tried to force me out was gone, fired, his career in tatters. I pulled out my phone and called Emma. Mom, what happened? You said they called you in. They fired Dennis, I said, and my voice cracked. They actually fired him. Oh my God. Mom, are you okay? I think so. I don't know. I feel like I'm in shock. Do you want me to come over tonight? I can leave work early. Yeah, I said. Yeah, I'd like that. I went back to my office and closed the door. Then I called Jessica. They fired him, I told her. And they're offering a settlement. Jessica let out a whoop. Patricia, this is huge. This never happens. Companies always try to settle quietly and keep the bad actors employed. They must have been terrified of a lawsuit. They should be, I said. We had them dead to rights. So what do you want to do? Take the settlement or push for more? I thought about it. I thought about 17 years at this company, about the career I'd built, about whether I could really stay here after everything that had happened. Let me see the settlement offer, I said. But Jessica, even if I take it, I'm not sure I can stay long term. You don't have to decide that now. Take the win, secure your position, and then figure out what you want. You have the power now. Power. That was a strange word. I'd spent months feeling powerless, watching my career get dismantled by a man who thought age was a disqualifier. And now that man was gone, and I was still standing. I spent the rest of the day in my office, trying to work but mostly just processing. People kept walking by my door, slowing down like they wanted to say something but weren't sure what. By lunchtime, everyone knew. The rumor mill was working overtime. Dennis Coulter had been fired for age discrimination. Patricia Henderson had taken him down. At 3 p.m., Harold appeared at my door. Is it true? He asked. It's true. He sagged against the doorframe. Thank God. Patricia, I was going to have to quit. I've been looking for jobs, but at 58, nobody wants to hire me. I thought I was done. You're not done, I said firmly. None of us are. Veronica came by 20 minutes later. She was crying. They're moving me back upstairs, she said, and giving me my accounts back. And Diane Matheson personally apologized to me. A senior VP apologized to me. We sat in my office, the three of us, and for the first time in months, we felt like we could breathe. The settlement agreement arrived the next afternoon. It was 23 pages of legal language, but the key points were clear. All of my original accounts would be restored to me immediately. I would receive $75,000 in compensation for emotional distress, and lost opportunities. The company would pay for any therapy or counseling I required. The performance improvement plan would be formally rescinded and removed from all records. With documentation that it was issued in retaliation, I would receive a written guarantee of employment security for a minimum of 5 years, with no discussions of succession planning based on age. The company would issue a formal apology if I chose to leave within the next 2 years. I would receive a severance package of 1 year's salary plus benefits. All legal fees would be paid by the company. Harold and Veronica received similar packages, adjusted for their specific situations. Jessica reviewed everything and gave me her assessment. This is a phenomenal settlement. They're paying you to stay, but they're also giving you a golden parachute if you want to leave. You have complete control. I signed on October 25, 2023. Gerald's company-wide email went out the next day. Subject: important message regarding company values and conduct. To all Momentum Marketing Solutions employees, I am writing to address a serious situation that has come to light in our Chicago office. Following an internal investigation, we have determined that age-based discrimination occurred in our workplace, primarily involving employment decisions made by former VP of Operations Dennis Coulter. This behavior is absolutely contrary to our company values and is a violation of federal law. Mr. Coulter is no longer with the company, effective immediately. Several employees were subjected to unfair treatment based on their age, including demotion, reassignment of accounts, and hostile work environment. These employees showed tremendous courage in coming forward, and I want to personally apologize for the failure of leadership that allowed this situation to develop. We are implementing immediate changes, including mandatory anti-discrimination training for all managers, a direct reporting line to corporate HR for discrimination concerns, and a comprehensive review of our employment practices. Age discrimination, like all discrimination, has no place at Momentum Marketing Solutions. Our employees are our greatest asset, regardless of whether they're 25 or 65. Experience, wisdom, and institutional knowledge are valuable, and we will not tolerate any suggestion otherwise. If you have concerns about discrimination of any kind, please contact Diane Matheson in corporate HR immediately. Gerald Packard, CEO, Momentum Marketing Solutions. The email caused an earthquake in the office. People I barely knew stopped by to congratulate me. Several older employees thanked me quietly, saying they felt the same pressure but hadn't known what to do about it. Younger employees seemed shocked that this had been happening. And Madison, who'd been so smug in that meeting where they tried to take my accounts, couldn't look me in the eye. 3 days after the settlement, Madison submitted her resignation. The rumor was that she'd been given a choice: resign or face termination for her role in the discrimination. She chose to resign. I wish I could say I felt bad for her, but I didn't. She'd been complicit. She'd benefited from discrimination, and she'd shown no remorse. The creative director position was posted internally, and this time, I was offered it directly. I accepted. As for Dennis Coulter, the story of his downfall spread through the industry surprisingly fast. In marketing, everyone knows everyone, and word travels. He tried to land another VP position at a firm in San Francisco, but when they called for references, the truth came out. He's currently working as a freelance consultant, according to his LinkedIn. His rate is about a third of what he was making at Momentum. His profile no longer mentions his time with us. In November, the company held a mandatory anti-discrimination training. It was conducted by an external firm that specialized in employment law. They used case studies that were clearly based on what had happened in our office, though names were changed. Sitting in that training, watching managers squirm as they heard examples of age-based comments that Dennis had actually said to me was surreal. This was my story, presented back to the company as a cautionary tale. The trainer, a sharp woman in her 60s named Dr. Carolyn Wu, made one point that stuck with me. Age discrimination is often invisible because we've normalized it. We make jokes about older workers being technologically challenged. We talk about digital natives as if being born before 1990 means you can't learn new skills. We describe older employees as coasting, or riding it out, while describing younger employees as hungry and energetic, as if age determines drive. These are all forms of discrimination, and they're all illegal. But more than that, they're stupid. You're dismissing talent, experience, and wisdom because of a number. That's not just illegal, It's bad business. Gerald sat in the front row, taking notes. He looked like a man who'd learned a very expensive lesson. In December, the company held its annual holiday party. It was the first one I'd attended in years where I didn't feel like I had to prove myself, where I didn't feel like I was being evaluated against some invisible standard of culture fit that really meant young enough. Harold came with his wife. Veronica brought her daughter, the college student she'd mentioned. We stood together, three people who'd almost been pushed out, now secure in our jobs and vindicated in our fight. To standing up for ourselves, Harold said, raising his glass. To documentation, Veronica added with a laugh. To not going quietly, I said. We drank to that. It's been a year since Dennis was fired. I'm writing this in November 2024, and I want to tell you where everyone is now because I think you deserve to know how these stories end in real life, not just in the immediate aftermath. Me? I'm still at Momentum. I know that might surprise you. After everything that happened, why didn't I leave? I thought about it. God knows I thought about it. Jessica told me I could probably find another position, easily with a settlement like that in my pocket, and a story like mine to tell. Emma encouraged me to take some time off, travel, figure out what I really wanted. But here's the thing. I built this division. I created something from nothing, and I wasn't going to let Dennis Coulter take that from me. Leaving would have felt like he won. So I stayed, and you know what? It was the right decision. As creative director, I've rebuilt the entire creative team. We hired 4 new people this year, 2 in their 20s, 1 in her 40s, and 1 who's 62 and has more innovative ideas than half the people I've interviewed. Age doesn't matter. Talent does. My client list is back to what it was, plus 3 new major accounts that came specifically because they heard about what happened and wanted to work with a company that had made things right. Turns out, standing up against discrimination is good for business. Last month, I got a call from Thornhill Industries, my biggest client. The CEO, David Thornhill, asked me to lunch. Patricia, he said over sushi at his favorite downtown spot. I heard what happened last year. The whole story. And I wanted you to know that if you'd left Momentum, we would have followed you wherever you went. We don't work with Patricia Henderson because of a company name on your business card. We work with you because you're brilliant at what you do, and you've been brilliant at it for 17 years. Age has nothing to do with it. I teared up right there in the restaurant. Thank you, David. That means more than you know. Also, he said with a grin, I'm 53. If Dennis Coulter thinks we're too old to be good at our jobs, then he's an even bigger idiot than I thought. The financial settlement was substantial, but more important than the money was what it represented. That $75,000 was the company saying, you were right and we were wrong. It was validation after months of being told I was the problem. I used some of it to take Emma on a trip to Italy, something we'd always talked about but never done. We spent 2 weeks exploring Rome and Florence and the Amalfi Coast. She posted pictures on Instagram of us drinking wine and eating pasta and laughing in the sun. One of her friends commented, Your mom looks so happy. Emma replied, She is. She fought for herself and won. I kept that screenshot. Harold is thriving. He's no longer reporting to Thomas, the 32-year-old who'd been put above him. The company restructured the accounting department and made Harold the director. He's 2 years from retirement now, but he's leaving on his own terms, with his dignity intact and a solid retirement package. I'm going to make it to 60, he told me over coffee last month. And then I'm going to retire and spend 6 months fishing and doing absolutely nothing. But I'm doing it because I want to, not because some punk kid pushed me out. Veronica got her old office back, not just out of the basement, but a better office, with windows and everything. She's rebuilding her client portfolio and recently closed the biggest deal of her career. A $300,000 contract with a manufacturing company that's going to carry her through the next 2 years. I almost gave up, she told me. I was so close to just quitting, taking whatever job I could find, accepting that this is just how it is. Thank you for fighting. Thank you for not going quietly. As for the company culture, it's changed. Not perfectly, no place is perfect, but noticeably. Managers are much more careful about how they talk about age. The hiring practices have been reviewed by external consultants. There's a genuine effort to value experience alongside innovation. And whenever there's a new hire, someone from HR makes a point of sharing our commitment to diversity and inclusion, including age diversity. It's corporate speak. Sure, but it matters. I've been contacted by 3 other women in similar situations at other companies. They found my story through industry contacts and reached out for advice. I talked them through the documentation process, connected them with Jessica, helped them understand their rights. 2 of them filed EEOC complaints. 1 settled out of court. The other is still fighting, but she's fighting smart, and she's going to win. There's a network of us now, women over 45 in marketing, tech, finance, and other industries where youth is fetishized. We share strategies, support each other, and refuse to be pushed out just because someone decided we've passed our expiration date. Gerald is still CEO, though his authority has been significantly curtailed. There's now a corporate oversight committee that reviews all major personnel decisions in our office. He's mellowed considerably. Whether that's genuine change or just fear of another lawsuit, I don't know. But he's never again questioned whether someone is right for a role based on age. Last month, he actually asked me for advice on a company initiative. "Patricia, I know I failed you," he said, and he looked genuinely uncomfortable. "I should have shut Dennis down the first time he made a comment about age. I should have protected you and Harold and Veronica. I didn't, and I'm sorry." "Thank you," I said. "Because what else do you say?" He was sorry, but being sorry doesn't undo the months of stress and humiliation. Still, it was something. "If it helps," he added, "I learned an expensive lesson. And I'm making sure every manager in this company learns it too." Madison, the 26-year-old who got the creative director job that should have been mine, struggled after leaving Momentum. She landed a position at a smaller firm, but lasted only 6 months before they let her go. Turns out, being handed opportunities because your boss discriminated against more qualified candidates doesn't actually prepare you for a real leadership role. I saw her at an industry conference last spring. She approached me hesitantly. "Patricia, I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. I didn't realize at the time what was happening, or I didn't let myself realize it. I benefited from something that was wrong, and I should have said something." I looked at her, this young woman who'd been so confident, so smug, now looking uncertain and genuinely remorseful. "I appreciate that," I said. "But Madison, you did realize it. You were in those meetings. You heard what Dennis said. You just didn't care because it benefited you." She nodded, tears in her eyes. "You're right. I was selfish and stupid. For what it's worth, I learned from it. And I'll never be complicit in something like that again." "Good," I said. Then something positive came out of this after all. We didn't become friends, but we parted on civil terms. She's young. She'll have time to do better. Dennis Coulter, on the other hand, has not done better. His freelance consulting business never took off. The industry is small and word spreads. People know what he did. They know he was fired for discrimination. They know he's toxic. I heard through a mutual contact that he tried to sue Momentum for wrongful termination, claiming he was the real victim. His lawsuit was thrown out in summary judgment. The judge apparently said that the evidence of discrimination was overwhelming and disturbing, and that Dennis was lucky he was only fired and not facing additional legal consequences. Last I heard, he left Chicago entirely. Someone said he's in Arizona now, working in a completely different field. His LinkedIn hasn't been updated in 8 months. I don't take pleasure in his downfall. That's what I tell people when they ask. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel a deep sense of justice. He tried to destroy my career because he thought I was too old to be valuable. Instead, he destroyed his own career by being stupid enough to say it out loud. The poetry of that is not lost on me. As for me personally, I'm dating someone for the first time in 5 years. His name is Michael, he's 57, and he's a professor of history at Northwestern. He's brilliant and kind and thinks my gray hair is beautiful. We met at a lecture series on 20th century labor movements. Yes, I've become the kind of person who goes to academic lectures for fun. Emma loves him. "He looks at you like you hung the moon, Mom." "That's because your mother is a badass who took down corporate discrimination," Michael said. "Well, that too." Emma laughed. "I'm also mentoring young professionals through a program at the Chicago Marketing Association. I tell them my story, the full story, not a sanitized version. I tell them about the comments, the documentation, the fear, and the fight. Stand up for yourself, I tell them. Document everything. Know your rights. And don't ever let someone convince you that your age, your gender, your race, or any other aspect of who you are makes you less valuable. Your work speaks for itself. Last week, one of my ments, a woman named Sarah who's 29, asked me a question. Do you ever wish you'd just taken the retirement package and left? Would it have been easier? I thought about it. Really thought about it. Easier? Absolutely. But easier isn't always better. If I'd left quietly, Dennis would still be there, doing the same thing to other people. Harold and Veronica might have been forced out, and I would have spent the rest of my life wondering if I gave up too easily. Do you think it was worth it? All the stress and the fight? I smiled. Sarah, I'm 54 years old. I'm creative director at a company where I've spent 17 years building something I'm proud of. I have financial security, a daughter I adore, a career that excites me, and a guy who thinks I'm amazing. I fought for all of this and I won. So yes, it was absolutely worth it. It's November 2024 now, and I'm updating this because something happened yesterday that felt like the final piece of the story falling into place. I got a LinkedIn message from a woman I didn't know. Her name was Jennifer Pratt, and she was 51 years old. She worked at a tech company in San Francisco. Dear Patricia, I heard about your situation at Momentum Marketing Solutions from a colleague. I'm going through something similar right now. My company is systematically pushing out older employees. I'm scared. I need my job, but I also can't keep accepting this treatment. Would you be willing to talk to me? I don't know where else to turn. Jennifer. I called her that evening. We talked for 90 minutes. I told her everything. How to document, what to record, how to find an employment attorney, how to file an EEOC complaint. I told her about the fear, the uncertainty, and the overwhelming relief when it was finally over. But what if I lose? She asked. What if they fire me and I can't find another job? Then you'll find a different job, I said. Or you'll start consulting. Or you'll do something you never imagined. But Jennifer, what's the alternative? Let them push you out quietly. Accept that at 51 you're disposable. No, she said, and I could hear the steel in her voice. No, I'm not doing that. Good. Then fight. Fight smart, fight clean, but fight. And know that you're not alone. After we hung up, I sat on my balcony with a glass of wine, looking out over the Chicago skyline. I thought about that day in Dennis's office when he told me I was too old, when he looked at me like I was a problem to be solved rather than a person who'd given 17 years to his company. I thought about how small I felt in that moment, how powerless, and I thought about how wrong he was. Age doesn't make you obsolete. It doesn't make you less innovative, less capable, or less valuable. If anything, it makes you more valuable because you've survived enough to know how to fight, how to stand up for yourself, and how to win. Dennis Coulter tried to fire me because I was too old. Instead, I ended his career and saved my own. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's simply refusing to disappear. It's standing up, speaking out, and proving every single day that you're exactly as valuable as you always were. I'm 54 years old. I'm the creative director of a division I built from the ground up. I'm mentoring the next generation while still crushing it in my own career. And I'm not going anywhere. Dennis learned that the hard way. And now he's gone, and I'm still here thriving. That's not revenge. That's justice. And it feels absolutely perfect. Last I heard, Dennis is working in real estate in Scottsdale, Arizona, making maybe $60,000 a year if he's lucky. His days of being a corporate VP are over. Me. I just closed a $1.2 million account with a Fortune 500 company. At 54, I'm having the best year of my career. Age is just a number. Talent is forever. And karma is real.